Welcome to Global Byte. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. North America stands at a crossroads, facing a moment that will define its future for generations to come. The once stable partnership between the United States and Canada, long considered unbreakable, is now unraveling before our eyes. For decades, the border was almost invisible. Trade, people, and ideas flowed freely, knitting the two nations together in a web of shared prosperity. But on February 5, 2026, that sense of certainty vanished, replaced by anxiety and questions about what comes next. Canada, under the leadership of Prime Minister Mark Carney, is making a bold decision to break from its traditional reliance on the US, charting a new course for the nation. The catalyst for this dramatic shift? President Trump's aggressive tariff-first strategy, using economic pressure not just against rivals, but even against America's closest allies. Canada, whose economy is deeply intertwined with that of the US, is refusing to capitulate or simply accept the new reality. Instead, Ottawa is pivoting, redefining its economic future, and seeking new opportunities beyond its southern neighbor. This isn't just a trade spat or a temporary disagreement, it's a profound shift in the way Canada sees itself and its place in the world. It's a fundamental rethinking of a century-old friendship, with consequences that will ripple across the globe and reshape alliances. The upcoming USMCA review has become the main battleground, a high-stakes negotiation that will determine the future of North American trade. For President Trump, it's a tool for leverage. For Prime Minister Carney, it's a call to action, a chance to prove Canada's independence on the world stage. In response, Canada is launching an urgent and ambitious plan to diversify its trade, forging new partnerships in Asia, Europe, and beyond, signaling it will no longer be a passive partner. This standoff is shaking the very foundation of the Western alliance, as the US turns inward and its allies are forced to look elsewhere for leadership and stability. Canada's bold move is resonating worldwide, from the corridors of power in Brussels to the bustling business districts of New Delhi, inspiring other nations to rethink their own alliances. The lesson is clear. In an age of rising economic nationalism and shifting global power, over-reliance on any one partner is a risk no country can afford to take. The quiet neighbor to the north has found its voice, uniting Canadians from coast to coast in a renewed sense of purpose and national pride. The world is watching as Canada forges its own path, confident, determined, and ready to shape its own destiny. Today's trade friction is years in the making. The USMCA, born from a tense NAFTA renegotiation, now faces a mandatory review in July 2026, a looming threat to North American stability. Tensions spiked after Trump's return to office. Talks stalled in October 2025, triggered by a Canadian ad campaign opposing US tariffs. Trump took it personally, freezing communication and escalating volatility. His administration's unpredictable moves, like musing about annexing Canada, deepened distrust in Ottawa. Carney's government tried to de-escalate, dropping a digital services tax opposed by Washington, but talks remained frozen. The message was clear. Appeasement wouldn't work. Canada realized it needed a more independent strategy to protect its interests. The era of predictable US-Canada relations was over. President Trump's trade playbook is blunt: tariffs, threats, and maximum pressure. His approach is unapologetically aggressive, designed to disrupt the status quo and force trading partners to the negotiating table on America's terms. The message is clear: compromise, or face the consequences. Canada is now in the crosshairs, facing threats of a 100% tariff on all goods, ostensibly for seeking a trade deal with China. The warning is stark, and the stakes are high. For Canada, the threat isn't just economic, it's a test of national resolve and diplomatic strategy. Key industries, like aerospace, are targeted with steep tariffs, aiming to create political and economic pain. These sectors are chosen for their strategic importance, with the hope that pressure on jobs and exports will ripple through Canadian society and politics. The goal: force Canada to concede by sowing internal divisions. By hitting where it hurts most, the US hopes to spark debate, dissent, and, ultimately, a shift in policy. The strategy is as much psychological as it is economic. This isn't just about Canada. The US is using tariffs globally, betting its market size gives it ultimate leverage. From Europe to Asia, Washington is flexing its economic muscle, confident that access to the American consumer is a prize few can afford to lose. But the backlash is growing. Instead of isolating targets, the US is pushing allies to build new trade blocs and supply chains. Countries are forging new partnerships, seeking to reduce their dependence on the US and shield themselves from future shocks. The tariff gauntlet, meant to assert dominance, may be accelerating a multipolar world. As nations adapt, the global balance of power is shifting, with new alliances and rivalries emerging on the world stage. Nations are scrambling for stability outside Washington's reach. Financial leaders and policymakers are urgently seeking alternatives, trying to insulate their economies from unpredictable US actions. The effectiveness of US economic coercion is now in serious doubt. As uncertainty grows, so does the risk that America's hardball tactics could backfire, leaving it more isolated than ever before. Canada's answer to US pressure: a national emergency, diversify, or risk economic subjugation. Over 75% of Canadian exports go to the US, a vulnerability now impossible to ignore. Carney's government is mobilizing the country to double non-US exports within a decade. Trade negotiators are fanning out worldwide, pursuing at least a dozen new deals. This is a wartime footing for trade, signaling to the world that Canada won't be bullied. The strategy: build a resilient network of global partnerships to buffer against future shocks. Carney's motto, "If you're not at the table, you're on the menu," captures the new spirit. Canada is leading a coalition of like-minded nations, determined to shape its own destiny. The era of passive partnership is over. Canada's diversification strategy is both global in scope and sharply targeted in its execution, aiming to secure the country's economic future in an increasingly unpredictable world. Europe is the first stop. Canada is maximizing the CETA agreement with the European Union, opening doors to a market of 450 million consumers. This partnership not only boosts exports, but also strengthens ties with some of the world's most stable economies, providing Canadian businesses with new opportunities for growth and innovation. Next, attention turns to the Gulf states and India. Here, Canada leverages its strengths in agriculture, technology, and engineering to tap into rapidly growing markets. These regions are hungry for Canadian expertise and products, making them ideal partners for expanding trade and investment. With India, Ottawa is investing significant diplomatic capital to secure a lasting foothold in one of the world's largest and fastest-growing economies. Building trust and long-term relationships is key to unlocking the full potential of this massive market. China, meanwhile, is approached with caution and precision. A sector-specific deal swaps lower tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles for improved access for Canadian farm exports, reflecting a careful balance of opportunity and risk in a complex relationship. This variable geometry approach means Canada tailors each agreement to the unique needs and realities of its partners, avoiding the pitfalls of one-size-fits-all trade pacts and ensuring flexibility in a changing global landscape. By weaving a web of overlapping partnerships, Canada is building a network that reduces risk and increases resilience, ensuring the country does not simply swap one dependency for another. The ultimate goal is clear: a resilient, diversified economic foundation that supports Canadian prosperity, innovation, and jobs for generations to come. In this new era, Canada's prosperity will no longer hinge solely on the political climate in Washington, but will be anchored in a broad global network of opportunity and stability. Trump's tariff-first strategy is uniting U.S. allies against the U.S. Countries once reliant on Washington are forming new economic blocs, bypassing America. The India-EU trade deal, long stalled, was finalized in response to U.S. pressure, creating a powerful corridor independent of the U.S. Canada is at the forefront, positioning itself as a leader among middle powers. By building flexible coalitions, these nations counterbalance both U.S. and Chinese dominance. Canada's security policy is shifting too, pledging to meet NATO's spending target and joining the EU's security action for Europe. This marks a move away from the traditional North American defense framework. The recalibration is economic and geopolitical. U.S. allies are hedging their bets, forging deeper ties with each other. The tariff war is shaking the global economy, and the U.S. is feeling it. The U.S. trade deficit widened dramatically in late 2025, as tariffs disrupted supply chains and spooked markets. Sectors like autos and tech, built on cross-border integration, are now volatile and uncertain. Businesses face higher costs, delayed investments, and a chilling effect on innovation. In the US, industries and consumers are feeling the pinch, fueling political backlash. In Canada, US pressure has unified the country behind Carney's costly diversification push. US officials dismiss Canada's efforts as unrealistic, but many economists disagree. Predictability and trust, not just geography, drive healthy trade. The US risks losing its long-term appeal as a business partner. Canada is embracing a new middle power doctrine. Under Carney, Canada is stepping up, no longer a quiet follower, but a shaper of the international order. The doctrine, flexible, issue-specific alliances with like-minded nations. From Europe to Asia, Canada partners with the EU on climate, with Japan on tech, and with India on food security. This nimble approach maximizes influence and collective leverage. Policy shifts back it up, higher defense spending and joining EU security initiatives. Carney's leadership and mantra, "If you're not at the table, you're on the menu," resonate with other middle powers. Canada is building a coalition to defend a rules-based system. Its prosperity now depends on proactive, assertive diplomacy. February 2026, North America stands at a crossroads. One path, renew the US-Canada partnership, restore predictability, and strengthen integration. The other, Canada accelerates diversification. North America splits into distinct economic blocs. The outcome hinges on Washington's choices. Will it de-escalate or double down on coercion? Project Vault and other US moves raise questions about the future of critical partnerships. This conflict tests the foundation of alliances. Are they built on trust or just leverage? Canada's bold pivot is a high-stakes experiment watched by the world. The once quiet border is now the front line of a new economic reality.